What's up, everyone? How's it going?
Hello, hello, hello. This is amazing to see these people here. I'm just totally blown away because when we launched Metacartel, it was like 2019. It was heart of the bear market, and it was just YOLO. And we're just doing it just to do it. And it's amazing to see all these people here. So thank you for coming, and all of you need to give yourselves a round of applause for coming.
Yeah, it's super surreal that it's all happening so fast. It's like, we originally thought it was gonna happen faster than it was. Then like super bear market hit, and you're like, oh, okay, it's gonna take 5 years for this, and like all of a sudden it's like ramped up like crazy. So, you can never anticipate it, but yeah, it's amazing.
Now, I'm just happy to be here in front of people. We all live our lives online, or this blended life, and this is one of the first things as we're maybe going back into the new Delta variant or just coming out of COVID. So it's good to see people and meet new people, and I think true to the sense of like the ethos of Ethereum. I know this has probably been talked about before, but just carrying on this like collaborative, positive sum multiplayer game, and we can all kind of LARP together.
Yeah, I think like the in-person events are so defining of everything we do. Like for me, that was like going to DevCon was the thing that got me to like quit my day job and go full time in Web3. And there's so like you probably get only 5% of the like communication bandwidth with other people on Zoom calls that you do in person. And if we're cool enough to deal with each other online with that 5%, when you get the full 100% in person, it's just like that much better. So it's amazing to see just how there's always so much alignment between everyone here. It's never like, I know there's other online communities where like they vibe online and they meet up in person. It's kind of like weird vibes, but it's never like that with the Ethereum community. So yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier too. It's like the layer 0 experience, right? There's on-chain, but the most important part is like the person-to-person relationships, our identity, our communities, our tribes, humans coordinating into tribes and stuff. That's like OG human stuff, right?
Cool. So now we're here. We're supposed to talk about social tokens. So where's the Metacartel social token?
It is sitting in Chile. So Chile token is a Metacartel social token. And yeah, we were talking about this earlier, how a year ago we had this sort of mentality, or we had this conception of what was going to be huge, which was like social tokens, and Seed Club too, Jess, I'm sure you guys were all on that same wave. And I think one thing the DAO community kind of missed was like everything that happened with these PFPs. And
I would argue that actually these PFP communities are actually DAOs. I think that one of the things, so this might be a little bit controversial, but I think what we miss as we focus on DAOs and organizing, that I think the PFP communities that they really get is they have this nascent sense of market watch. Actually, it's quite fascinating. You buy into a PFP, right? And you're all kind of shilling, doing your thing, and we're like, why are they shilling? But that is part of it, because everyone there is always kind of making this implicit decision as the price of that PFP is going up. Why am I still in this community, right? It's like the whole Netflix or Amazon or Zappos, here's $10,000 to quit. And everyone knows everyone else has that deal. But just imagine on a daily, hourly basis, that price going up. So you get into something, quintessential like a Bored Ape, right? You bought it for like maybe half an ETH or an ETH. Now it's like worth significantly more. And so now you're like, okay, do I just sit here? Do I join this community and make it kind of like, what's going on? And you need that back pressure, right? There's no voter apathy in these PFP DAOs that are going up because you have that back pressure. I think these are the things that we, in terms of DAOs, not need to think about how do you run organizations better from like a Web 2 perspective, but looking at these native Web 3 communities and what can you learn. I think that needs to be kind of incorporated in a DAO. And it's almost like being and understanding and just buying into this whole DAO narrative from like 2016, 2017 with the DAO, you kind of get blinded to what's happening with PFPs right now. And that's why I think, I'll get off my soapbox real. These PFP communities, what's so great about them is because they know they can exit, they're participating, making conscious decision, and you see good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Like you see everyone being so like positive. And I think like, you know, if you are in an online community long enough, it just kind of degrades to the kind of lowest common denominator, especially as it gets bigger. But like with these PFP communities, it's that buying in and skinning the game that helps solve this. So you have this like trustless asset from like a, you know, no middleman and it's all self-sovereign. And it's this trustless asset that actually can maybe solve for trust online. So it's like, it's that unlock. And I think when it comes to DAOs, we need to incorporate those type of mechanics to keep that pressure of people in. And maybe a DAO isn't just a better way to vote, it's just a different way to kind of completely organize. And I think we're gonna see these emergent behaviors in the future. And what I would implore everyone when we're thinking about DAO tooling, whatever it may be, try to keep an open mind in terms of like what's happening here, because the market is saying something. It may, is it 2017 ICO thing all over again? Or is this fundamentally something different? Are there little morsels, right? Like, you know, a bunch of scams in 2017, but there's some really great projects that came out of it. So what can we learn here instead of casting the kind of baby with the bathwater kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think a common thread I've seen like repeated a lot in the last few days is we need to make sure in DAOs that we're not just doing things that work because they work and like stop trying to innovate or, you know, think outside the box. And, you know, I think the larger crypto community falls into this in general, and I think this is kind of the other side of the coin with, you know, what's not so great about these PFP projects and even, you know, DAOs is, you know, this whole 10K PFP drop, you know, playbook worked really well. So everyone just hyper-focused on doing that and like milked it to the extreme. You know, you have like, just like the ICOs, right? Someone figured out a token sale on chain works really well, and we forgot about like, forgot about any other future innovation we could do with tokens and just, you know, tunnel vision on let's do ICOs. And everyone just did ICOs and no one did anything beyond that because ICOs worked. So we kind of have this tendency to fall back on things that work and not move past them to experiment. And that that desire to experiment and, you know, break things, do new things, think outside the box, and not get stuck in the way things are done right now is really important for moving forward. And, you know, just like the DAO communities, we kind of were thinking in our own ways and missed what these PFP projects are doing. These PFP projects, they got tunnel vision on those. So I think it's always about filtering these things out for what's the gold. It's like gold panning, right? You wanna sift out all the dirt and find the gold, and then, you know, bring all the pieces of gold together, and you can maybe have a whole gold bar at one point. So yeah, I think making sure we take the learnings from those communities and apply it in DAOs, and then also give our learnings from DAOs into those communities. So we've been talking with this in MetaFactory a lot, actually. Like, so MetaFactory, I think, is like, you know, one of the like DAOs in the DAO space that is kind of targeting more this cultural aspect of like, you know, we're not doing PFPs, but we're doing merch, right? Which is in a way the same thing. It's like you're dressing up your own character. This is your loot. You have your, you know, different traits on the merch and stuff. So we're thinking, what would like a MetaFactory PFP project look like? And we realized that, hey, you know, we should probably make it so your PFP is a representation of your actual contributions in a DAO and the things that you uniquely did. So, you know, if you guys are familiar with DeepDAO, it's like a dashboard that shows all your DAO activity, how many DAOs you're part of, proposals you've been in, things like that. You know, so what if your DeepDAO score was a trade on an NFT and it influenced the rarity of it? And so it adds a lot more substance to these things where, you know, there's that criticism of these PFP projects where it's like, you know, these are just JPEGs, and, you know, these are people just kind of like pumping up JPEGs. What's the like productive value being created here? And I think once you bridge that with like identity and reputation and credentials, right? Like having a verified way to say like, this guy is a dope UX designer and he's done all these projects, and you know, it's a pre-vetted thing. There's like signatures, there's an NFT to represent that. You know, we can start to mix together the things that work well with these cultural NFT, PFP projects with like productive DAO, you know, output, and making difference and changing things. And I think, yeah, like I'm really excited about the intersection of all those. And we've learned a lot of lessons in the last few months with all this. And I know a lot of people like heads down building. So I think, you know, 3 to 6 months from now, there'll be a lot of really awesome stuff where these things start to like collide and coalesce. And, you know, right now, people have kind of just been running around in an open field, and we've like, you know, traced out some paths, and now it's time to like turn those paths into roads, you know, the beaten path into like public infrastructure and roads and tooling and, you know, playbooks. And, you know, I think Collab.land, for example, is an amazing road, you know, for the ecosystem. And the more we start to build these little atomic building blocks that we can compose off each other, the better off we'll be. And, you know, so, you know, DAOs and NFTs, and we can learn a lot from DeFi too, because I think DeFi really showed the power of building in a modular way and, you know, iterating from, you know, simple primitives. So, you know, we started with ERC20, and then we had Shapeshift, and then we had Ether Delta, and then we had Uniswap, and then we had Compound, and then we had Yearn, and then we had, you know, all these things that built off each other. You couldn't have built Yearn in a silo outside of, you know, Compound and Uniswap and having all these other things to build on top of. So, you know, we have Collab.land, we have like, you know, MetaFactory and Coordinape and SourceCred and all these like building blocks. And I'm really excited because that's like the first layer built out now, and now there's a lot of really awesome stuff being built, you know, composing these things. And we're gonna use that to progressively get into like more and more complex systems that scale much better, and start to put a lot of the best thinking in each of these different fields into one. So it's no longer like, oh, this is the DeFi crowd, or this is the, you know, DAO crowd, and this is the NFT crowd. We all just kind of start to coalesce and cross-pollinate, and it's just the Web3 crowd.
Yeah, I think that's kind of happening now. And this is why I would urge everyone, like if you are serious about a DAO, go into one of these PFP projects and just buy a PFP and get into a token-gated chat, because they don't understand DAOs, majority of them. They're like, oh, I'm in this token-gated chat. I'm just gonna get a vote bot in here. That's good enough for me. They don't know like on-chain voting, off-chain voting. They're like trying to figure this out themselves. And I think this is that inflection point where we can leverage and build off of each other. And in terms of like what we're talking about here today, for example, with like identity, what they're doing is they're like, oh, I see this like a Discord handle in one token-gated chat, mod in that group is now a mod in here. So just really easy, just not on-chain identity or anything like that. They're like, okay, this project has some type of signal that's a bit more legitimate. So I'm gonna, and that's how I honestly look at it, because it's just so many PFP projects now that are launching that it's hard to like know which is like legitimate, which is not, and it's really about the people that are in there, especially the mods and the core team that first starts. So you can trace lineage from like a CryptoPunk to a Bored Ape to like a World of Women, et cetera. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna watch these people and see what they're doing, and see what projects that they're coming up with, right? So like, I think it's World of Women actually, they have this revenue share. So if you buy a certain PFP, all the secondary sales, I think you have to have like a gold necklace or something like that. You're part of that club, and then you earn revenue, and then they're like, okay, what do we do with this? And they just have to do a multi-sig. So I think it's happening right now. And I think inevitably, this is why I think, especially these mainstream PFP projects, they are DAOs, because what is gonna happen once you're in a, you know, from a Collab.land perspective, once you're in a token-gated chat, that's like minimum viable DAO right there, right? You just need to get the holders together, and then you start deciding on things. So I think DAOs are going to be inevitable here, and I don't know if it's going to look like what we think it looks like. Yeah. So that's all I'm saying. And there are ways that they're solving for voting and ways that they're solving for identity because it's needed, yeah, but it's far from ideal. So I think this is the opportunity in terms of being able to like keep an open mind and understand, okay, where is this going and what tools, and we need the tools now. So I think this is the exciting building part, but it's not coming at the right part of the cycle, because a lot of building happens in the bear market, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's hard to kind of filter signal from noise too. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah, I think like another class of NFTs that are going to be much, much more important than people think, or like most people think, is stuff like POAP. So POAP, I think, is really powerful because it's like a cryptographic trace of who you were with at what place at what time. And that's incredibly powerful information for Sybil resistance, for identity, for reputation, like social graphs and circles. And it's amazing because it's just about having the data there. So with POAPs, like right now we're in like the data collection phase almost, where we're trying to map these out. So all these events we went to, they all have POAPs. We all see these guys were there, these guys weren't there. And the NFT is not about like how much is this worth, how much can I sell it for. It's way beyond that. You're not going to want to sell your POAP of where you've been, because that's like so unique and specific to you. And even when I pull up my list of POAPs, it's like a bookmark for like everywhere I've been in major events that I've been to, and like turning points in my life even. So it has much more significant meaning, and the more we can start to like collect and build off this data, so we can start using these as like civil resistance mechanisms. So even we're experimenting with this with Chile right now. If you guys haven't seen, there's a bunch of NFTs that we collabed with a bunch of artists with for MCon. So it's in the MCon chat, I think. A link to the OpenSea page. There's a bunch of auctions happening. The MetaFactory event tonight, the auctions are going to close off there. We might have some in-person auctions too, like standard like hand raise style, which is pretty cool. I was saying like we should not be afraid of more physical stuff, because like we only need OpenSea when we're not in person. When we're in person, it's such a rich experience, just like being like, oh, I'll bid this much, oh, I'll bid this much, what, just do it that way, classic. So yeah, and I think we can use these NFTs as like, these are the people who are here, these are people who have this, and it's our responsibility now to then expand on this universe and like give more meaning to these NFTs, right? If anyone was in ETC Paris, you might have gotten a golden Chile card, right? And we didn't know what we were going to do with them at that point, but we just knew that they were cool, and we were just going to give them out. But now we're like, okay, now anyone who comes to the MetaFactory event who has a golden Chile card, we can just give them free merch. That's a perk for being a part of the community, and all this is emergent, and we can just like build incentives for each other and use these NFTs as like a shelling point, or like it's like the interface in which we talk with this, right? So like NFTs have been really focused around like art and like attaching an image to a token, but it's way bigger than that. I think NFTs are way bigger than any ERC20, because almost all of life's experiences and interactions and relationships are non-fungible, right? Like my relationship with Punya is not fungible with like my relationship with Mia or Drew or anyone else. So in that way, I think once we go into the NFT bear market and people actually build and innovate, then maybe we'll have a lot of these richer, meaningful, non-monetary too. That's the cool part. I think we can have non-transferable NFTs that have some monetary value in terms of like you unlock access to opportunity and you unlock these extra perks, and so it does have some monetary thing, but it's not about speculation of the asset itself. Instead, the asset is like it's a passport into a community. It's something to recognize that you were a part of something. And yeah, there's so much to build here, and I think that the key thing is not letting any existing notions or concept or structures in our mind about these things dictate what we design in the future. And I see it in myself too, where when I was first coming into this space, I was way more creative and I had way better ideas than I do now, because now I'm like way too deep into it, and I'm just talking to the same people and having the same conversations like, every day, and I'm not coming from that fresh mindset anymore. So bringing in new people with like fresh ideas who don't have the wired up concepts of how things are supposed to be, because they've just been like spending all day on crypto Twitter, which is really bubbly and like really kind of clicky in a lot of ways. I think we'll start to expand beyond that, and you see it happening now, especially with I think on the ground stuff where you're able to connect with people on a whole other level. I don't know if some of you saw, but there was this like emergent DAO circle that happened in the street, and yeah, last night, where some people just, it was like 3 people that just like sat down together, and then other people started joining, and you know, within, it was like everyone there for hours, and there was like maybe like 50 people or something, I don't know how many, in this huge circle in the middle of the street, and people just walking by looking at like this huge circle of people, like what's going on, and some people even stopping by being like, I want to like catch the vibes here, like what's going on. And this like emerging coordination. So I think, you know, hitting that layer 0, actually going out, creating DAOs to like run events in cities, and you know, FWB I think is doing awesome stuff, and AmCon, I think this event and everything going on here really inspired us to push on this more. And you know, pandemic kind of slowed things down a bit, but I think it was good in a lot of ways because it helped us innovate on how we connect online. And for me, I think the ideal ratio is like 80% remote online and 20% in person, where we can like connect and sync on a high bandwidth basis, and then most of the time we can like go back, heads down, work and build. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I really want to know how many people are in at least one DAO.
Better be.
And then like more than one. So it's like you're in one and then you're just pilled into like a bunch of others, right? So then,
no one's in as many as Cooper though.
Right, he's in everyone. So like as we talked and bring this conversation back to identity, like if you're part of one DAO, like do you start again in another? Like do you have to build up, there's a different context? Like how do we figure out like, okay, I'm part of so-and-so DAO for this long, and then I joined this DAO. Is that appropriate to like think about, so that when you're in your 4th or 5th DAO, because I mean, 1 or 2 DAOs is kind of full-time for me, really, like if you want to like really be into it. So it's just like, all right, I really want to join this other DAO, but then I'm gonna have to, you know, just start from like ground. Is that the appropriate thing for every single DAO? Or how do we have this, like, when we're talking about identity, you know, kind of be portable? Or what does that mean? Because you have DAO A, whole different set of ethos versus DAO B, but then maybe there's a filtering or something, and how do you move that across, do you think?
So I think we're starting to experiment with this in like sort of the meta cartel ecosystem of DAOs. So, you know, Raid Guild's doing an awesome job of like onboarding new devs and designers, and, you know, going even beyond that into like community people and Discord mods. And, you know, Meta Factory is also bringing in a bunch of artists and people from the fashion industry, creatives, and we're connecting them with like projects to collab on, and Raid Guild's like sending devs. So we're all cross-pollinating. And I think the way DAOs can outcompete traditional organizations is that they can provide things, they can pay people in things that are non-monetary. So if we have a way to say in MetaFactory, for example, if some artist does a drop with us, like they get a cryptographic record attached to their address that they did this work on this project. And then same with Raid Guild, we have like a structured way to say this person did this many raids and they did design work, and these are the people that they worked with, and this is how they rated their work, and this is the feedback that they gave each other. And we have these like structured ways of engaging with each other, and we record this data. Then all the work that I do in Raid Guild is then like instantly transferable in a lot of other places, and it can be recognized, you know? So I think in that way, we can create these standards and tooling to allow people to build up their credentials in their portfolio. So even if they don't get paid for it, they're getting paid by this on-chain verifiable proof that they did this work, which is really valuable, and it can open up a lot more opportunities for them in the future. So
how do you do it so that it doesn't get or become weaponized? Like, what's the Black Mirror scenario of that? I think that's part of the kind of downside of identity and why people are treading lightly.
Yeah, I think the key for that is like we're not trying to have some sort of global identity, right? It's like we're just using what we directly need. So like MetaFactory and Raid Guild directly need these tools. We're not trying to build it for everyone. We're building it for us first. So we need ways to recognize that these are the artists that worked on these drops, so when they can apply to work on new drops, that the people can see that they did this. So it's within this community, right? The people who care about that information will see it and can access it and can choose how to value it, right? Like maybe someone doesn't think MetaFactory, if you worked on a MetaFactory drop, it's not worth anything, right? And that's up to them. They can like project their own values and beliefs or what something is worth into the thing that they're talking about. And different communities and different circles will have their own, you know, reputation networks or systems or whatever works for them within their specific community practices or beliefs or whatever they need. And I think, you know, we've lived in and grown up in a centralized world, so we have this like mentality that we need to like come up with something that works for everything, and it's going to be like this one central identity standard and this one central reputation system, and you know, it's going to be standardized across everything. We don't need that. We just need local zones, and standardize across those, and then grow from there. Like build what you need right now and what people want to use right now, and don't try to over-design it, and just iterate. I think that's how we'll get there.
Yeah, and I think DAOs themselves as an entity need their own identity as well.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm new to crypto and I'm like, I just walk down the street and I talk to someone at this conference and they're like, oh yeah, I'm bought into DAOs. Where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was Ellie on Twitter that was talking about the future is going to be like agents on chain. Agent could be an individual, it could be a DAO, it could be a composition of many DAOs. But, and Gnosis, what they came up with, Zodiac, is awesome for this too. It creates the kind of infrastructure to build not necessarily like these like islands of DAOs, but networks of DAOs where there's not necessarily any strict boundary between one DAO and another. And we have these ways of creating connective tissue between different organizational blocks. So right now we still have this like, oh, MetaFactory is a DAO, and these are all the people working for MetaFactory. It's not really the case. MetaFactory is like, has touched all these areas, and there's people that overlap with MetaFactory and Raid Guild and MetaCartel and all these other communities, and it's not really that well defined, and it's much more loose in structure, but also it's deconstructed, but still organized in a peer-to-peer way, right? Instead of like, oh, here's MetaFactory, everyone goes through MetaFactory. It's more so teams on the ground who are aligning under the MetaFactory brand and working with each other. And it's open and permissionless, and anyone can be a part of the journey, right? So yeah, that kind of delineating even between what's a person, what's a DAO. Like you have a general, this is a entity or an agent in this system, and it might even be an AI one day, right? And the agent becomes like the API that you program with, in terms of like DAOs compensating people or other DAOs, or creating positive sum collaborations, token swaps. You know, there's all these like cool tools we can build to have structured incentive alignment with tokens and NFTs and stuff with DAOs and agents.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this is kind of this next version of evolution when it comes to just like voting. We talked about, oh, quadratic voting versus, you know, some type of conviction voting, quorum based, and the mechanics of that now to like really what it's about is like humans at the end, right? Like, and coordinating together.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Maybe
I think
we
we're
open up to a question or something?
Yeah, I think we're almost at time, so if anyone wants a question, we can do a question and then close it off.
Any questions? No questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.